Yeshua come. All creation cries for the returning of our King. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. You are welcome in this place, be enthroned upon our praises. May our worship rise like incense as we magnify the Son. Mighty God of Israel, Lamb upon the throne, all blessing and honor to our God forevermore. Even so, Lord Jesus, come. All creation cries for the returning of our King. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. We join our hearts together. We come in one accord. The bonds of peace unite us in the Spirit of the Lord, who clothe us with salvation, robes of purest white, the body of Messiah. We are precious in your sight. Even so, Yeshua come. All creation cries for the returning of our King. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. And the Spirit and the bride say, come. And the Spirit and the bride say, come. To the Lion and the Lamb, heaven's King, the great I am. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. Even so, Yeshua come. All creation cries for the returning of our King. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. Even so, Yeshua come. All creation cries for the returning of our King. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. Come and take your place on your throne, Jerusalem. Come and take your place on your throne,
So this is Boker Tov, good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. I'm wearing a shirt I picked up the other day. It's Memorial Day Monday. Want to encourage, I'm a veteran myself, everyone to remember the ultimate sacrifice made so that we can live in a free nation. Our nation is on a downward spiral right now where we may just have to take it back if we want it back, but that's another story. Don't let me get wrapped up in that. I see some wonderful people have joined us. Sister Infinity Madison, what a wonderful young lady she is. Brother Bernie, Brother Bailey, my wife is watching, so I'm sure others will join us. As I said, good to see everyone. Shabbat Shalom. We are today in part 9, going through Hebrews from chapters 1 through 10. Part 9 of Hebrews from a Messianic lens, or you might say Hebrews from a Hebrew perspective. Hebrews from a Hebrew perspective, brothers and sisters, the only way to understand a book, a set of scrolls, that every single word was penned by a Hebrew is to do it from a Hebrew mindset. It really does not work too well with a Greek or Western mindset, okay? That's why you have 55,000 different denominations, each one preaching a different Jesus. That's why. Now, don't let me get started on that either. Let's go ahead and start here. What we'll do is we'll begin in verse 10 where we left off last week. Hebrews 9 verse 10, where we left off last week, just to get our context. Remember, the context of the letter is priesthood transfer from the Levitical to the eternal of the Messiah. Our Melech Zadok, our King of Righteousness. It has nothing to do with the abolition of the Torah as most people teach. That is simply a scriptural impossibility, as that is one of the eternal covenants. So, verse 10, chapter 9, concerned only with foods and drinks, various washings, and fleshly or earthly ordinances imposed until the time of Reformation, or you could say reformation. What is being reformed? Verse 11. Let's read 11 through 15 and start off here. Verses 11 through 15. But Messiah came as high priest. There it is, our priesthood, of the good things to come. That is the reformation. The good things to come is going from the temporary Levitical to the eternal of the Moshiach. With the greater and more perfect tabernacle, see that, talking about priesthoods, not made with hands, that is not of this creation, not with the blood of bulls and goats and calves, but with his own blood. He entered the most holy place once for all, having obtained eternal redemption. Not just covering for a year, see? Eternal redemption, talking about the priesthood. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, meaning the red heifer, of course, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to Elohim, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living Elohim. We'll talk about dead works in just a moment. And for this reason, he is the mediator of the new covenant. That's actually the renewed covenant. We're going to see that from the Aramaic in just a minute. By means of death for the redemption of the transgressions under the first, that those who are called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance. Did you hear that? Those who are called. You must be called or you will never come. So let's look. Listen to verse 11 from the Aramaic, which I am convinced is the original and not the Greek. quote, but the Messiah, who came as high priest of the good things which he created, and entered into that great and perfect tabernacle, which was not made with hands, meaning human hands, not made with hands, and was not of those created things, unquote. Our writer is continuing the theme of why Messiah's new priesthood of his renewed covenant is superior to the Levitical law of the Levitical priest, which only covered sin for 1 year with the blood of bulls and goats, as opposed to Yeshua's priesthood, which obtained what? Eternal redemption for his people through his blood, which also cleanses our conscience from, what did verse 14 say? Dead works. Okay, dead works, beloved ones, is not following Torah. That is not dead works. That Torah works are living works, or you could say righteous works. Why? Because they came from a living and righteous Elohim. That's why. Dead works is our violation of Yahovah's eternal path, the path of Torah, the path of what he calls light. What does Psalm say? It says, your word, your Torah, is a light to my feet and a lamp to my path. Beloved ones, when you turn off the light of his eternal Torah, how can you see where you're going? How can you see? What do you use, for instance, to live your life by? Do you use some silly church covenant, which every single one of them are different? Is that what you use? Do you use your own or some other mortal man or woman's set of ideas and standards? Is that what you do? You can see where this could cause major problems. Major problems. Dead works, which you could also translate works of death. Works of death. What is sin? Sin is the violation of the Torah. 1 John 3:4, right? And what is the wages of sin? Death. Romans 6:23. That's what dead works are. See how simple things can be when you connect things together properly. When you connect the Bible together properly. Now, I want to read to you verse 15 that we just read from the Aramaic. Quote, and for this reason. What reason? Because of how his priesthood is superior. Because of this reason, he became the mediator of the renewed covenant. That's exactly what it says in the Aramaic. The renewed covenant, that he might by his death be redemption to them who had transgressed the first covenant, the Torah covenant, or whose transgression was not only covered, not removed, so that they who are called, by whom? Yah calls his people. Those who are called to eternal redemption might receive the promise, unquote. Now, both the Aramaic hadatwa and the Hebrew hadash means what? To repair or renew. To repair or renew. Let me give you some examples in Scripture where the word hadash is used and translated properly. Psalm 51:10 is one. Quote, renew, hadash, renew a right spirit within me. Everybody knows that word. Not a brand new spirit, just renew a correct spirit within myself. Lamentations 5:21 is another example. It says, renew as in days of old, talking about Jerusalem. Renew it as in days of old, not make it brand new. Just renew it as in days of old. Hadash, as I also mentioned, can mean repair. Repair, as seen in Isaiah 61:4. Repair the waste places. Repair the waste places. As we have already seen in this series, Yah speaks of the renewed covenant in Jeremiah 31 through 37, in that he would what? Quote, put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts. Why? So that what? The seed of Israel shall never cease from being a nation before me forever. Unquote. This is my blood. Look at it this way. This, my friends, that is the renewed covenant. That's it. That's the renewed covenant. The Sinai covenant transferred from stone tablets to the hearts of his elect, with a superior high priest and a better or eternal priesthood. That's what the renewed covenant is. That's all it is. Listen to what Yeshua said from Matthew 26:28 from the Aramaic. Quote, this is my blood of the renewed covenant, which for the sake of many, oh, did you hear that? Did it say everyone? No. For the sake of many, not all, just the elect only, is shed for the forgiveness of sin, which of course is violation of the Torah. He is only, as he said, quote, sent to the displaced sheep of the house of Israel, his elect, for all eternity. And the only reason, beloved ones, the only reason we former Gentiles can lay any claim whatsoever to this blessing is because Yah grafted us in to his eternal nation and people. See Ruth 1:16. Israel is what that's talking about. Ephesians 2:11 and 12 say it very clearly. Then you can look at Jeremiah 31:31 and see to whom this renewed covenant is for. It's for the house of Israel and the house of Judah only. That's why this grafting is so important to see. And that kind of narrows it down to a select few, does it not? Does it not? Let's look at verses 16 and 17. I don't want to get bogged down here. I want to finish this chapter. 16 and 17, chapter 9, for where there is a testament, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is in force after men are dead, since it has no power at all while the testator lives or is alive. Now, these verses simply say that a will is useless while the one who made until the one who made the will passes away, until he dies. The inferior priesthood of the Levites had to be replaced by the superior of Yeshua because he is eternal. And Yeshua's high priest, as high priest, removes sin, whereas the Levitical high priest could only cover sin for 1 year. Speaking, of course, of Yom Kippur. Let's look at 18 through 22. 18 through 22. Therefore, not even the first covenant, that word's been added, but it's a good addition, was dedicated without blood. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water, scarlet wool, and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant which God," or Elohim, "has commanded you." And likewise, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and the vessels of the ministry, talking about the Levitical system. And according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no remission or forgiveness of sin. That's quoting 17:11 of Leviticus. Now, in verse 18, you can see that the word covenant has been added here. It's in italics. Now, this is fine. This is fine, as this is referring to the Ten Commandments. But perhaps it would have been better to have inserted a little clearer. You could have said, quote, "Therefore not even the first set of stone tablets was dedicated without blood." In verse 19, explain what happened when Moses presented the tablets to the people and sprinkled blood on them. Look at verse 21. Then likewise, or just like Moses, sprinkled blood on the stone tablets and the people, he did so also for the Levitical tabernacle and the tabernacle vessels used in temple service. What the writer is doing here is demonstrating how important blood is. And he's also, we'll see in just a minute, going to be comparing Messiah's blood with the animal blood and how it is far superior. How it is far superior. The animal blood for the stone tablets and the tabernacle vessels. And as I mentioned, verse 22 quotes Leviticus 17:11. Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission or forgiveness of sin. Now, these next passages we're going to read tie these former verses, the ones we just read, into how Messiah's blood is superior. 23 through 26. Therefore, remember what I told you, whenever you see the word therefore, it's always there for a reason. It is referring back to what he just said. Therefore, it was necessary that the copies of the things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Messiah has not entered the holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of Elohim for us. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest of the Levitical system enters the most holy place every year with the blood of another on Yom Kippur. Then he would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world, but now, once at the end of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. All right. Verse 23 mentions, since the things in the heavens are superior to the things of the earth when sacrifices are compared, or when priesthoods are compared, then quite naturally the things from above are higher to this earth. They're far, far better. They are superior. Again, our writer mentions that Yeshua, in verse 24, never performed priestly duties in the earthly temple. Remember, he is from the tribe of Judah. He would not have had anything to do with much of that false priesthood installed by the Romans anyway. Okay? Made up mostly of Egyptians. That's a fact from history. That's a fact from history. In John 8, he called them children of Satan. I have a message on this page, on this site, called The Synagogue of Satan. Who is it really? Please take a moment and look at it. It is not who most people say it is. It is not the Jews. It isn't. That's not possible. I prove that clearly from Scripture. Yeshua serves in the very presence of Yahovah right now. At, quote, at his right hand, the writer has already said twice. He said it in chapter 1, verse 3, and I believe in chapter 8, verse 1, that Yeshua is sitting at the right hand of the Father. In verse 25, our writer once again references Yom Kippur, how the earthly Levitical high priest had to keep coming back year after year with animal blood. Have you noticed, my friends, how he keeps repeating himself? That's why I keep repeating myself in this, because the writer keeps repeating himself on the subject of the priesthoods. It is just about all he has written about. Just about all he has written about. Amazing how people miss this. In Revelation 13:8, beloved ones, it reads, quote, that the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world, unquote. Meaning, before the universe, before creation even, in the mind of Elohim, Yeshua's blood was shed. This is why. This is why he could take this blood of the everlasting covenant, as Hebrews 13:20 calls his blood of the everlasting covenant, and apply it to anyone or any nation, Israel, that he chooses to do so. It does not matter which side of the cross you were born on. Salvation has always been the same. It's always been the same. And this election, most people hate that word, but it's biblical and it is a fact of Scripture. This election of Yahovah was made before creation as well. Look up Revelation 17, verse 8, and see when the Lamb's book of life was written and sealed. Before the foundation of the world. I'll save you the trouble. Verse 26 reads, he had to suffer. He only had to suffer or sacrifice himself once. Once. Remember, in the plan or mind of Yah, he was slain before creation, but manifested in time some 2,000 years ago. The comparison in these verses again make clear the superiority of Yeshua's eternal priesthood over the temporary Levitical priesthood, which had to end. Verses 27 to 28, last two verses today. I'm going to close out chapter 9. And it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment. So Messiah was offered once